Ladies and gentlemen, to live a life free from dependence is to live a life of true strength. Many people tether their happiness, their sense of self-worth, and even their emotional stability to the presence of others. They seek validation, reassurance, and a constant flow of external support, fearing that without it they will collapse. But such a way of living is fragile, for it places the foundation of one's well-being in the hands of forces beyond control. To depend on others for happiness is to give them power over your emotions, your decisions, and ultimately your peace. A person who cannot be content alone is a person who has not yet learnt the most fundamental lesson of life. You are your own anchor. The fear of solitude often drives people to hold on to relationships, friendships, and social circles that add little value to their lives. They would rather be in mediocre or even toxic company than face the quiet of being alone. But in doing so, they unknowingly surrender their autonomy. They become prisoners of expectation, constantly adjusting their thoughts and actions to fit the mold of what others expect or demand from them. In contrast, a person who has freed themselves from dependence does not shape their identity around the approval of others. They do not need constant validation, nor do they seek permission to exist on their own terms. Emotional dependence creates an unstable foundation because people are unpredictable, inconsistent, and often burdened by their own struggles. If one places their happiness in the hands of another, what happens when that person withdraws? What happens when they change, disappoint, or leave? The emotionally dependent person is left adrift, forced to seek out a new source of comfort, often repeating the same cycle of attachment and distress. This is why those who are afraid to be alone often find themselves in a state of constant emotional turbulence, as their inner peace is dictated by external forces beyond their control. To free oneself from dependence does not mean rejecting relationships or isolating oneself from the world. It means approaching relationships from a place of strength rather than need. When a person is comfortable in their own solitude, they no longer seek companionship out of desperation or fear. They do not grasp at people in an attempt to fill a void, nor do they tolerate disrespect or mistreatment simply because they cannot bear to be alone. Instead, they choose their relationships deliberately, forming bonds that are rooted in genuine connection rather than necessity. The strength of an independent person lies in their ability to be whole within themselves. They do not need others to complete them, nor do they require constant affirmation to feel worthy. They understand that their value is not determined by how many friends they have, how often they are praised, or how much attention they receive. Their sense of self is grounded in their own principles, their own actions, and their own internal compass. They are steady because they have built their foundation on something unshakable, themselves. Many people seek distractions from solitude because they fear facing themselves. They fill their time with meaningless social interactions, shallow conversations, and relationships that offer little more than temporary relief from loneliness. But those who embrace solitude understand that being alone is not the same as being lonely. In solitude, one has the opportunity to reflect, to grow, and to cultivate self-awareness. It is in the quiet moments that a person truly comes to understand themselves, unfiltered by the expectations or opinions of others. The one who is free from dependence walks through life with an unshaken spirit. They do not crave attention or approval, nor are they easily swayed by the moods and judgments of those around them. Their emotions are not dictated by the presence or absence of another person. If someone leaves, they do not collapse. If they are misunderstood, they do not waver. They have learned to stand alone, and in doing so, they have discovered a power that many will never know. There is no greater freedom than the ability to find peace within oneself. A person who is self-sufficient in their emotional and mental well-being is not at the mercy of others. They do not feel trapped in relationships that no longer serve them, nor do they make choices out of fear of losing someone. They are guided by their own convictions rather than the shifting tides of social validation. Their happiness does not fluctuate with the actions or opinions of those around them. In a world where many seek constant connection to avoid the discomfort of solitude, the one who has mastered self-sufficiency stands apart. They do not rely on others to create meaning in their life. They do not seek external distractions to escape their own thoughts. They are comfortable in their own presence, secure in their own identity, and at peace with their own company. Those who fear solitude often become easy to manipulate, for their need for companionship can be exploited. They tolerate mistreatment, accept false friendships, and remain in relationships that drain them, all because they believe they cannot stand alone. But the one who has freed themselves from dependence cannot be controlled in this way. They do not stay where they are not valued, and they do not compromise their principles for the sake of fitting in. Their strength lies in their ability to walk away, to stand firm, and to be content whether they are surrounded by others or entirely alone. Independence is not about rejecting human connection, but about ensuring that connection is a choice rather than a necessity. The person who has cultivated self-reliance approaches life with a sense of calm that is rare. They do not live in fear of loss because they have everything they need within themselves. They do not feel incomplete when alone because they have built a life that is fulfilling even in solitude. To be free from dependence is to be free from fear. It is to know that no matter who comes or goes, no matter how the world changes, you remain steady. It is to walk through life with the quiet confidence that your happiness is not held in someone else's hands, but in your own. Peace is a treasure that many seek but few attain. It is not merely the absence of noise but the presence of inner stillness, a state where the mind is unshaken by external turbulence. Chaos, on the other hand, is the default state of the world. Constant movement, unpredictable change, and endless distractions. Many find themselves entangled in relationships, situations, and environments that do not bring them peace, but instead introduce unnecessary turmoil. They remain caught in cycles of conflict, emotional exhaustion, and anxiety, often because they fear solitude more than they fear the cost of being in the wrong company. But when one truly values peace, they come to understand that it is better to be alone than to endure the endless storms created by others. Many believe that being surrounded by people, friends, partners, colleagues, brings fulfillment. While meaningful relationships can indeed be a source of joy, not all company is beneficial. Some people thrive on drama, bringing with them a constant stream of problems, negativity, and conflict. They complain endlessly, criticize without purpose, and demand attention without offering support in return. Their presence turns daily life into a battlefield, where peace is always out of reach. Those who fear being alone often tolerate this chaos, convincing themselves that any companionship is better than solitude. But this is an illusion. The cost of maintaining toxic relationships far outweighs any fleeting comfort they might bring. A person who values peace does not entertain unnecessary conflict. They do not engage in petty arguments, nor do they allow themselves to be drawn into the emotional turmoil of others. They recognize that not every battle is worth fighting, and not every opinion requires a response. This is not cowardice, but wisdom. Engaging in every dispute, reacting to every insult, and allowing oneself to be emotionally disturbed by the actions of others is a form of self-imposed suffering. There is a great strength in choosing silence over unnecessary confrontation, in prioritizing one's own mental stability over proving a point. Many suffer not because they lack the means to be happy, but because they allow chaotic influences into their lives. They welcome individuals who bring stress. They engage in habits that breed anxiety, and they remain in environments that drain their energy. Yet the solution is often simple. Remove what disrupts your peace. Distance yourself from those who thrive on negativity. Choose calm over unnecessary excitement, and understand that not every invitation to conflict must be accepted. The one who values peace does not seek out constant stimulation, nor do they crave the validation of being surrounded by others at all times. They are content in their own space, comfortable in their own company, and at ease in the quiet. Chaos is seductive because it disguises itself as excitement, as passion, as an unavoidable part of human interaction. Many mistake conflict for connection, believing that constant drama is a sign of deep relationships. They mistake noise for meaning, thinking that busyness is the same as purpose. But true fulfillment comes not from chaos but from clarity. The mind that is at peace sees things as they are, without distortion, without the influence of unnecessary external pressures. It is not swayed by every passing emotion, nor does it rely on the approval of others to feel whole. There is a certain kind of power in knowing that nothing external can disturb your inner world unless you allow it to. The person who has mastered peace does not react impulsively, does not let their emotions be dictated by others, and does not seek unnecessary validation. They walk through life with a quiet confidence, understanding that their serenity is worth more than any fleeting social connection. They choose their battles wisely, not out of fear, but out of the understanding that most things are not worth sacrificing peace over. The fear of loneliness keeps many trapped in chaotic situations. They tolerate mistreatment, they endure stress, they sacrifice their well-being, all because they believe that solitude is worse. But this belief is misguided. Solitude is not suffering, it is an opportunity. It is in moments of silence that one truly comes to understand themselves, to hear their own thoughts clearly, and to cultivate a deep sense of inner stability. The person who embraces solitude learns that peace is not something granted by others, but something cultivated within. The one who prioritizes peace does not chase relationships, does not cling to drama, and does not engage in meaningless conflict. They have nothing to prove, no need to control, and no desire to impress. Their presence is calm, their words are measured, and their actions are intentional. They do not allow others to pull them into chaos, nor do they contribute to it. Instead, they move through life with a quiet strength, knowing that true power is not found in dominance or control, but in the ability to remain unshaken. A life free from unnecessary chaos is a life of clarity. Without the noise of constant conflict, one can focus on what truly matters: growth, purpose, and genuine connection. Without the distractions of toxic relationships, one can invest in self-improvement, in meaningful experiences, and in a deeper understanding of the world. When peace becomes the priority, everything else falls into place. There is no longer a need to seek constant approval, to engage in meaningless arguments, or to endure the presence of those who bring only negativity. There is only the quiet certainty that a peaceful life is a powerful life, and that no amount of external chaos is worth sacrificing one's inner stillness. Self-mastery is the foundation of a strong and fulfilled life. It is the ability to govern one's thoughts, emotions, and actions with discipline and clarity, rather than being ruled by impulse, fear, or external influences. Many people drift through life reacting to circumstances, shaped by the expectations of others, never taking the time to truly understand or refine themselves. They seek external validation, chase fleeting pleasures, and allow emotions to dictate their choices. But true strength comes not from external achievements or recognition, but from the ability to command oneself. Growth is not measured by what one acquires, but by the depth of understanding and control they develop over their own mind and behavior. A person who masters themselves does not live at the mercy of their emotions. They do not allow anger to dictate their words, nor fear to prevent them from taking necessary action. They do not indulge in self-pity or let anxiety consume them. Instead, they recognize emotions for what they are: temporary states that must be acknowledged but not obeyed. When one learns to observe emotions without being controlled by them, they gain a powerful advantage in life. Instead of reacting impulsively, they respond with wisdom. Instead of being consumed by frustration or resentment, they maintain clarity and perspective. This level of control is not achieved through suppression, but through deep awareness and understanding. Growth requires discomfort. It demands that one confronts their weaknesses, acknowledges their flaws, and works relentlessly to improve. Many people avoid this process, choosing comfort over progress. They remain stagnant because they fear failure, rejection, or the effort required to change. But self-mastery is impossible without struggle. Strength is not developed in ease but in challenge. The person who seeks growth willingly places themselves in situations that test them, not because they enjoy hardship, but because they understand that every challenge is an opportunity to refine their character. They do not avoid responsibility or make excuses for their shortcomings. Instead, they take full ownership of their actions, knowing that only through responsibility can one truly change. Discipline is the path to mastery. It is easy to follow desires, to seek immediate gratification, and to avoid difficult tasks. But the person who is ruled by pleasure is a slave to their impulses. They procrastinate, they indulge, and they allow distractions to pull them away from their purpose. The disciplined person, however, does what needs to be done whether they feel like it or not. They wake up early, they train their mind and body, They remain committed to their goals even when motivation fades. They understand that success is not built on moments of inspiration, but on consistent effort over time. They do not rely on external rewards to stay focused. Their drive comes from within. Mastery also requires self-awareness. Many people go through life unaware of their own habits, tendencies, and weaknesses. They blame others for their failures, refusing to look inward. But without self-awareness, there can be no true growth. To master oneself, one must first understand oneself. Why they think the way they do, why they react to certain situations in specific ways, what patterns of behavior hold them back. This requires brutal honesty. It is not easy to confront one's own flaws, but those who do gain the power to change them. Self-awareness allows a person to break free from destructive habits and replace them with behaviors that serve their long-term well-being. A person committed to self-mastery does not waste time on meaningless distractions. They are selective about what they consume, whether it be food, information, or relationships. They understand that everything they expose themselves to shapes their mind and character. They do not engage in gossip or surround themselves with negativity. Instead, they seek knowledge, wisdom, and experiences that challenge them. They value deep conversations over idle talk, meaningful work over temporary pleasure, and long-term fulfillment over short-lived excitement. Growth is a lifelong process. There is no final stage where one can say they have mastered everything. Even the strongest, most disciplined individuals continue to learn, adapt, and refine themselves. They do not grow complacent or assume they have nothing left to improve. They seek to sharpen their mind, strengthen their body, and deepen their understanding of the world. Every day is an opportunity to be better than the day before. One of the greatest indicators of self-mastery is how a person responds to adversity. Life is unpredictable, and challenges will always arise. Some crumble under pressure, allowing difficulties to break them. Others endure but do so with bitterness, constantly complaining about their hardships. But the person who has mastered themselves does not see obstacles as misfortunes. They see them as tests, chances to prove their strength, to develop resilience, to become wiser. They do not dwell on what they cannot control. Instead, they focus on what they can change, adapting and pushing forward with unwavering determination. A life of self-mastery is a life of freedom. The person who has control over their own mind and actions is not easily manipulated, not driven by impulse, not bound by fear. They are independent in the truest sense, not just financially or socially, but mentally and emotionally. They do not need validation from others to feel worthy, nor do they fear solitude. They are comfortable in their own presence, secure in their own choices, and confident in their ability to navigate life's challenges. Ultimately, growth is a choice. Many will avoid it, seeking comfort over progress, pleasure over discipline, distraction over self-reflection. But those who commit to mastering themselves will rise above the rest. They will move through life with clarity, strength, and purpose. They will not be swayed by external circumstances, nor will they be trapped by their own weaknesses. They will build themselves into individuals of true power, not power over others, but power over themselves. And in doing so, they will experience a level of peace, fulfillment, and freedom that few ever attain. Not all relationships are worth maintaining. Many people hold on to connections that drain them, deceive them, or lead them into unnecessary conflict, all because they fear being alone. But false bonds come at a cost, mentally, emotionally, and sometimes even physically. These bonds can be disguised as friendships, romantic relationships, or even professional associations, yet at their core they lack authenticity, trust, and true connection. Recognizing and avoiding these empty relationships is a key step toward personal growth and emotional well-being. A false bond is any relationship that exists out of habit, obligation, or fear, rather than genuine mutual respect and value. Many people stay in friendships where they are merely tolerated rather than appreciated. They invest time and energy into people who do not reciprocate their efforts, who bring only negativity or selfish demands. The same applies to romantic relationships that persist out of comfort rather than love, out of attachment rather than deep connection. When a person remains in these situations, they sacrifice their peace for the illusion of companionship. One of the greatest costs of false bonds is the emotional exhaustion they bring. A A relationship that is not built on mutual understanding and respect becomes a burden rather than a source of support. Many find themselves constantly giving, offering their time, their energy, their patience, only to receive little or nothing in return. They tolerate criticism, inconsistency, and even disrespect, all because they do not want to sever the tie. But in doing so, they slowly erode their own self-worth. A relationship that leaves one feeling drained, anxious, or unappreciated is not a relationship worth keeping. False bonds also cloud judgment. They prevent people from recognizing what they truly need and deserve. When one is surrounded by shallow or toxic connections, they begin to accept less than they should. They normalize being treated as an option rather than a priority, making excuses for those who consistently fail to show up for them. Over time, this weakens their standards and makes them more vulnerable to further manipulation and disappointment. Instead of seeking out meaningful relationships, they settle for whatever is convenient, even if it comes at a personal cost. The fear of loneliness often drives people to maintain these unhealthy connections. They convince themselves that any relationship, no matter how empty, is better than solitude. But this is an illusion. Loneliness is not simply the absence of people. It is the absence of true connection. A person can be surrounded by others and still feel profoundly alone if those relationships lack depth and sincerity. In contrast, solitude can be a place of strength if it allows one to detach from what is false and focus on what is real. There is also the hidden cost of lost time. Every moment spent in a false bond is a moment that could have been invested in personal growth, meaningful experiences, or relationships that truly matter. Many look back on years wasted in friendships that never uplifted them, in relationships that never truly fulfilled them, realizing only too late that they settled for less than they deserved. Time is the one resource that can never be recovered, and wasting it on insincere connections is one of the greatest losses a person can experience. False bonds also limit personal freedom. A person who is entangled in shallow or toxic relationships often finds themselves acting against their own best interests. They compromise their values to fit in, silence their opinions to avoid conflict, and engage in activities that do not align with their true selves, just to maintain a connection. Over time, they lose sight of who they really are. Instead of making choices based on their own goals and principles, they become trapped in the expectations and pressures of those around them. True freedom comes not from having many relationships, but from having the right ones. Connections that support and encourage rather than control and drain. One of the clearest signs of a false bond is inconsistency. A person who truly values you does not disappear when it is inconvenient for them to be present. They do not only reach out when they need something, nor do they ignore you when you are struggling. In a false bond, there is often an imbalance. One person does most of the work, while the other only engages when it serves their interests. These relationships are not based on genuine care, but on convenience. Recognizing this pattern is crucial to breaking free from it. Avoiding the cost of false bonds requires courage. It means being willing to walk away from connections that no longer serve a positive purpose. It means refusing to lower one's standards just to avoid solitude. It means valuing quality over quantity when it comes to relationships, choosing to invest in people who truly reciprocate that investment, rather than those who simply take without giving. This is not an easy path, but it is a necessary one for anyone seeking a life of peace, self-respect, and true connection. A person who frees themselves from false bonds discovers something invaluable: the ability to be content with their own company. They do not feel the need to force relationships or chase after those who do not truly care. They recognize that it is far better to stand alone with dignity than to be surrounded by people who do not value them. They choose authenticity over social obligation, depth over social obligation, and peace over unnecessary conflict. In doing so, they create space for the right people, those who appreciate them for who they truly are, to enter their lives. Many people believe that the more relationships they have, the more valuable or fulfilled they will feel. They chase numbers, more friends, more social circles, more connections, believing that quantity equates to significance. But in reality, true fulfillment does not come from having many relationships, it comes from having meaningful ones. Choosing quality over quantity in relationships is one of the most important decisions a person can make for their emotional and mental well-being. A few genuine connections hold far more value than countless shallow interactions. Superficial relationships are easy to maintain but offer little in return. Many social circles are built on convenience rather than deep understanding, where interactions are based on surface-level conversations rather than meaningful exchange. In such relationships, people may talk frequently, attend social events together and share light-hearted moments, but they rarely provide real support during difficult times. When challenges arise, these connections often prove fragile, disappearing when true emotional investment is required. A person who prioritizes quantity over quality may find themselves surrounded by many acquaintances, yet feel deeply alone. Quality relationships, on the other hand, are built on trust, mutual respect, and genuine care. These connections withstand time, distance, and adversity. A true friend does not vanish when life becomes difficult. They remain present, offering support without expecting anything in return. In romantic relationships, true quality means understanding, emotional security, and shared values rather than just attraction or convenience. In professional life, a single meaningful partnership can be more beneficial than dozens of shallow networking contacts. Choosing quality ensures that every relationship serves a meaningful purpose, rather than being maintained out of obligation or habit. One of the dangers of prioritizing quantity is the dilution of time and energy. A person who tries to maintain too many relationships will often spread themselves too thin, unable to invest deeply in any one connection. They become exhausted trying to keep up with obligations, social gatherings, and conversations that do not truly fulfill them. Their emotional energy is drained by people who may not even add value to their life. When one chooses quality, they focus their time and effort on fewer but more meaningful relationships, allowing for deeper connection and stronger bonds. Another issue with quantity-based relationships is that they often require constant validation. People who chase numerous friendships or social circles tend to measure their worth based on how many people surround them. They fear being alone and believe that being constantly engaged in social activities defines their importance. This leads to a cycle of seeking approval, maintaining unnecessary connections, and avoiding solitude. But true confidence does not come from the number of people in one's life. It comes from knowing that the relationships one does have are genuine and fulfilling. Choosing quality also means embracing selectivity. Not everyone deserves access to one's time and emotions. Many people remain in relationships that no longer serve them simply because they feel obligated to do so. They tolerate inconsistency, disrespect, or indifference out of a misplaced sense of loyalty. But a person who values quality over quantity understands that not every connection is meant to last. They are not afraid to walk away from relationships that drain them or fail to contribute to their growth. They understand that maintaining a large network of shallow relationships is far less valuable than nurturing a few deep and meaningful ones. In choosing quality, one must also learn to recognize what truly matters in a relationship. Many friendships and connections are built on convenience. Work colleagues who spend time together simply because they are in the same environment, social groups that exist only because of shared activities, or online interactions that never progress beyond casual exchanges. But convenience is not the same as depth. A truly valuable relationship is one where both individuals genuinely care for each other, support one another's growth, and remain present even when circumstances change. Quality relationships also contribute to personal growth. Being surrounded by the right people helps an individual become the best version of themselves. The right friendships encourage self-improvement, challenge harmful behaviors, and inspire progress. They are built on honesty, where difficult but necessary conversations can take place without fear of judgment. In contrast, maintaining too many shallow relationships often leads to stagnation, as these connections rarely push a person toward meaningful growth. A person who prioritizes quality seeks out those who inspire them, who challenge their thinking, and who help them evolve. The fear of missing out often leads people to chase quantity over quality. They believe that being part of every social circle, attending every event, or maintaining a large network will bring them happiness. But this is an illusion. True happiness comes not from having many people around, but from having the right people. It is better to have a handful of close relationships that provide genuine fulfillment than to be surrounded by many people who do not truly care. Ultimately, choosing quality over quantity leads to a life of greater depth, meaning, and peace. It allows for relationships that bring real joy rather than superficial engagement. It ensures that one's time and energy are invested in people who truly matter. It fosters personal growth, emotional security, and a stronger sense of self. In the end, the number of connections a person has is irrelevant. What truly matters is whether those connections add value, bring peace, and contribute to a life well lived. Independence is one of the greatest strengths a person can cultivate. It is the ability to stand on one's own, free from excessive reliance on others for emotional, financial, or personal stability. While human connection is valuable, dependence on others for validation, decision-making, or fulfillment weakens one's sense of self. True independence means having control over one's own life, choices, and emotions, allowing for a deeper sense of confidence, resilience, and peace. A person who is independent does not wait for others to rescue them from difficulties. They understand that challenges are inevitable, but they do not seek external solutions for internal problems. Instead, they develop the discipline to confront obstacles on their own, relying on their own reasoning and strength to navigate life's uncertainties. This does not mean rejecting help when it is genuinely needed, but rather cultivating the ability to function effectively without constant support. Many people feel powerless because they depend too heavily on others for emotional reassurance or practical solutions. Independence removes this vulnerability, replacing it with self-sufficiency and inner stability. One of the greatest benefits of independence is the freedom it brings. A person who relies too much on others often finds themselves constrained by their expectations, opinions, or limitations. They hesitate to make decisions without approval, fearing judgment or rejection. They shape their actions based on what others want rather than what aligns with their own values and desires. This form of dependence is limiting, preventing personal growth and self-expression. When one embraces independence, they no longer need external validation to feel secure. They live according to their own principles, making choices that serve their true purpose rather than conforming to social pressures. Independence also builds resilience. Life is unpredictable, and those who depend heavily on others often struggle when their support systems fail. A person who has built their strength independently is not easily shaken by setbacks. They do not fall apart when faced with loneliness, failure, or rejection. Instead, they adapt, relying on their own problem-solving skills and mental toughness to push forward. This ability to remain strong in the face of adversity is one of the defining traits of a truly independent person. They do not seek escape from difficulties through distractions or excessive reliance on others. They face challenges head-on, knowing they are capable of overcoming them. Financial independence is another crucial aspect of strength. Many people remain trapped in unhealthy situations, whether in relationships, jobs, or living conditions, because they lack the means to support themselves. When one is financially dependent, they are at the mercy of those who provide for them, often compromising their freedom and dignity in the process. Achieving financial independence means having the ability to provide for oneself without relying on external sources for survival. This does not mean accumulating excessive wealth, but rather maintaining control over one's financial decisions, ensuring stability and avoiding unnecessary dependence on others. It grants the freedom to walk away from toxic environments and make choices based on personal fulfillment rather than financial necessity. Emotional independence is equally vital. Many people believe they need others to make them happy, relying on relationships or social interactions to feel a sense of worth. However, this creates a fragile foundation for happiness, as it places one's emotional well-being in the hands of others. True strength comes from being able to find contentment within oneself. An emotionally independent person does not need constant affirmation to feel valued. They do not crumble when faced with solitude, nor do they seek relationships simply to fill a void. They understand that while companionship is enriching, their sense of self-worth is not dependent on external sources. Independence fosters self-awareness and growth. When a person is constantly surrounded by others, they often absorb the thoughts, opinions, and emotions of those around them, sometimes losing sight of their own identity. Solitude, when embraced, provides the space needed for self-reflection. It allows one to examine their thoughts, identify their true desires, and cultivate their own perspectives without external influence. A strong, independent person takes time to understand themselves deeply, continuously refining their character and aligning their actions with their values. Another significant advantage of independence is the power it grants in relationships. Those who are independent do not enter relationships out of need, but out of genuine connection. Many people stay in unfulfilling or toxic relationships simply because they fear being alone. They tolerate disrespect, compromise their values, or accept less than they deserve because they do not believe they can thrive on their own. An independent person, however, does not settle for relationships that do not align with their standards. They do not tolerate mistreatment or rely on another person for their happiness. Instead, they choose relationships based on mutual respect and genuine affection, knowing they are complete on their own. Independence is not about isolation or rejecting meaningful connections. Rather, it is about having the strength to function fully on one's own while still appreciating the presence of others. It is about choosing relationships out of desire rather than necessity, making decisions based on personal conviction rather than fear, and standing firm in one's identity regardless of external circumstances. A truly independent person is not easily swayed by manipulation, peer pressure, or temporary emotions. They move through life with clarity, knowing they are fully capable of handling whatever comes their way. Ultimately, independence is one of the greatest forms of strength a person can possess. It provides stability in uncertain times, resilience in the face of challenges, and the freedom to live authentically. It allows one to build a life on their own terms, unburdened by unnecessary reliance on others. A strong, independent person does not fear solitude, failure, or hardship because they trust in their own ability to navigate life. They move forward with confidence, knowing that their strength comes not from external sources, but from within themselves. Independence is not about rejecting the world or isolating oneself from others. It is about cultivating the strength to stand alone when necessary, while still appreciating the value of genuine connections. It is about choosing relationships out of desire rather than dependence, making decisions based on personal conviction rather than fear, and walking through life with confidence rather than hesitation. A truly independent person does not fear solitude, failure, or hardship because they trust in their ability to navigate life on their own terms. In the end, the greatest power one can possess is the ability to rely on oneself, not because they must, but because they can.